Afternoon, everyone. I'm Chris Spencer, and I'm still the new president of the Methodist Foundation of Louisiana, and we're glad to have you join us this afternoon for our webinar entitled The Best Time to Develop a Stewardship Strategy. We're excited today to introduce the Reverend Ken Sloan, who will host us for this half-hour webinar, maybe just over a half-hour webinar. And let me give you a little bit of background on Ken. He is the United Methodist Church's Director of Stewardship and Generosity, housed at Discipleship Ministries in Nashville. Ken is a clergy member of the Greater New Jersey Conference, hence my conversation when y'all were probably joining the call about Ken and with his home state. Ken served 20 plus years in local church ministry, including a successful new church start. And he also served 5 years as the director of connectional ministries for the conference there, for the Greater New Jersey Conference. This afternoon, Ken is going to help explore ways that you and your team can have an intentional plan for incorporating stewardship in 2022. If you have any questions, please type them in the chat whenever you like, and Ken will address them at the end. We plan to go until about 2:30, but longer if there are more questions. So without further ado, I will turn the program over to Reverend Ken Sloan.
Great. Well, good to be with everybody. Good to be here and sharing with you. I am going to share my slide deck with you, and I'm going to move through my slides pretty quick. My wife is a native Tennessean, and she says sometimes I talk faster than she can hear. But I'll try to move through some of these so we do have some time for questions. And so let me do my sharing here if I can, and do that. And then come down here and do this. Okay. I think we're set up the way we want to be, so that's great. So I'm going to talk today about developing a stewardship strategy. This is something that I have kind of advocated for folks to spend time doing, and probably at the beginning of my tenure here at the Discipleship Ministries in the field of stewardship and generosity. So that'll be what we'll be talking about, and I'll be sharing, and it's really about kind of opening ourselves up to some new creative ways to keep both stewardship and generosity in people's minds. I like to put this slide up just so that if you want to take down my email address, if you have a question that comes up that you didn't get a chance to ask, that you're more than welcome to email me. I am usually able to see my email just about any time of the day. We also have a UMC Stewardship Facebook page that you can check out. And of course, our website is umcdiscipleship.org/stewardship. And on the second Thursday of each month at 10 o'clock, I do what's called a stewardship discussion forum. It's just a kind of a time to get some people together and talk about topics around stewardship and building generosity in their churches. I oftentimes will have some folks who come in who do the stewardship work professionally, who are friends of mine, who like to be engaged in the discussions. And so it's usually a good time. It's, again, the second Thursday of each month. And so you're invited to drop in on that too, if you'd like to join us. So the reason I picked this title is really from an African proverb that I heard and was really impressed with. And I think it kind of resonates for a lot of stuff in our lives. When you ask the question, what's the best time to plant a tree? And the answer to that, of course, is 20 years ago. But what's the second best time? And the second best time is today. So if you haven't thought about a stewardship strategy before, what was the best time for a stewardship strategy? Well, the best time was probably a year or two ago or farther. But the second best time is to start today. We're still in January. We still have time to kind of put plans into motion. And so I'm happy to be able to kind of pick this topic up as the first of 3 webinars I'm going to be doing with being hosted by the folks at the Louisiana Foundation. So it's just great to be with you. Mainly what I found when I started this position 10 years ago was for the majority of churches that I talked with, this is what how stewardship was practiced. It was basically, we looked at the fall, we found a time, maybe a week, maybe 2 Sundays, maybe if you were enthusiastic, maybe 3 or 4 Sundays, we're going to talk about stewardship. And as soon as we were done, and as soon as we had the cards back, we put stewardship away and said, we don't have to talk about it again for another year. This quote up here is from an actual campaign letter that my wife and I received when we were church shopping around in Nashville area. And it got to be time for the annual campaign. And that's the first line in the letter. Nobody likes to talk about money, but we have to do this once a year. If this is the approach that we're taking to stewardship, if this resonates in the congregation where you are, I just really feel we're missing a great opportunity. And so what I've been encouraging folks to do is to think in a broader way about stewardship, about the topic itself, about generosity, and to have a wider vision for how we can keep these themes before people. I think what happens when we only isolate it into a week or 2 or 3 in the fall, it becomes like that kind of bad medicine that we have to hold our nose and swallow and then get done with it. And then we don't have to think about it again. But the reality is that stewardship and generosity is an integral part of being a disciple of Jesus Christ. And we know that because it's woven throughout the Gospels and the way that Jesus talks to us and approaches us about how we're going to live our lives and how we want to organize our lives so that we make ourselves most open to God's love and presence in our lives. So what I began to talk about as we kind of developed this was the idea of a 12-month plan for stewardship. And some churches I've talked to actually go broader than that. They say, well, we came up with so many ideas that we really kind of want to develop a 3-year plan and kind of rotate through that. So we kind of get to this point and we're able to go back and revisit some ideas that worked really well for us. But there's a little booklet here, and I will drop this link into the chat at some point. Let me see if I can do that right now. I don't know if they'll let me do that, but here we go. I'm going to drop that into the chat right now. Here we go. No? Do it? Yeah. Okay. And this is a little booklet that was prepared by Herb Mather, who was one of my predecessors at Discipleship Ministries in the field of stewardship. And it's from an older piece that he wrote, but I think it's classic wisdom about how to, and it gives some great ideas right up front of ways you can kind of plan out a year and keep the stewardship themes before people throughout. Again, if you want to click on that link, it'll enable you to download the booklet as a PDF. You can find some helps in it. I will tell you there's a lot of references to mail, because at the time that Herb wrote it, mail was the thing that most churches used, but these references can be adapted to email. And it also accompanied, he references in the booklet another little workbook called Letters for All Season, which is out of print now. But again, if you go to that link, you'll see an opportunity where you can also download the Letters for All Seasons. I have it as a PDF and have permission to kind of make it available to people for free. And he gives sample letters of how people can send out. I get requests from people all the time for, samples of stewardship letters. And I offer that link to folks and say, these were mail letters, but you can adapt them if you're doing your correspondence through email now. They're able to be adapted in that way. I think when you start to develop a strategy, one of the things I recommend, and we are talking more and more about this in my agency, in all the things we do, and this is from Simon Sinek's book, and it really is called Starting with Your Why. And what he talks about in the book is that most of us, when we want to kind of come up with new ideas, we start with the what. We think about the events. We think about the letters. We think about in our case, we'll think about a booklet or a webinar or a course. And what he encourages us to do And then the next step would be probably for us to look at, okay, this is what we want to do. Let's figure out how we do it. And Sinek's thing is to say that what we really want to do is start with our why. Why? What is our why in this particular situation? If we start with our why, then we understand where we want to go. And then we work ourselves back to that. We work through the how and then the what of that. So what I like to do is share a little bit with you about how that would work in developing your stewardship strategy. So the first question to ask would be then, why is stewardship important for our church? And so I'll just throw out some ideas, and some of these may resonate with you and some of them won't, but I still think it's the best question that you can bring to a group of folks, a group of leaders in your church, and say, why is stewardship important for our church? And for some folks, the issue that's going to come up is institutional survival. We're not going to be able to pay our bills if we don't become more effective in our stewardship. And that's a cause. What I say to folks is I'm less concerned about institutional survival and paying the bills as I am about funding mission and ministry, that ongoing process of saying we want to be a church that is actively engaged in mission and ministry beyond our walls in our community and reaching people, and funding that is important. That's a key component. Just surviving is really not all that necessary if we don't have some kind of structured ministry and mission that's giving us a reason to continue to be good stewards. Sometimes one of our focuses, we want to grow individual generosity. We want to open our people's eyes to the joy that comes from generosity. Maybe we're looking for wider participation, for more people in the congregation to make a deeper commitment, to step up. Hopefully, as people get more involved, as they give more, they get more involved, they get deeply involved. Remember that Jesus said, that where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. He didn't say it the other way around. He didn't say where your heart is, that's where your treasure will be. But where you invest yourself, where you put your treasure, is where your heart is going to follow. And so, to get more people involved, to get deeper commitments. And I'll just run through these. Maybe the motivations is growth and outreach. We want to reach more people. We want to make more of an impact. We want to have more than just members. We want to have disciples who are growing in their maturity day by day. Maybe what's important to us in stewardship is we want to make the world more just. There's many things that are wrong, many people who are suffering, many people who are the victims of injustice, and we want to be more in tune with that. Planetary survival, do something about our creation and the way that our climate is in jeopardy. And maybe we want to teach people about how they can enjoy more and crave less. Maybe we want to speak to this cultural phenomenon about consuming, and that we always have to buy the next thing, and that this product or whatever the product is going to be the thing that makes us more popular or more loved or better people. So any one of these might be the one that comes to mind when you ask that question of what is your why? What is the purpose for growing stewardship? Oftentimes I'll talk with a local church group, and I'll ask the folks are saying, well, I said, is your church interested in reaching new people? And most churches will say, yes, we're interested in reaching new people. And I'll say, why? And oftentimes the answer I get back from folks is, well, our giving is down and we need more people giving. Well, then I ask them to talk more about that, because is that really what the mission to our mission to make disciples of Jesus Christ is really all about? Is it really all about more giving units? Or is there, in fact, what we see is that we found something in our relationship with Jesus Christ that we want to open up to other people? And that when we open up and they have that opportunity, that then our church becomes stronger in so many different ways, in our ability to reach new people, in our mission and ministry, and being able to grow. So again, I think it's a great way to begin that process. Now, let me also say, and I try to mention this as often as I can in my presentations, that when I'm going to talk to you about this, I am not the expert in what's going on in your local church. You are. You are the context expert in your local situation. And so you're the ones that got to say, if I throw out ideas to you, and that's kind of what I feel like my role is, to kind of get people stimulating and thinking so that new ideas will approach. You're the ones who got to say, this will work in my church, or this will never work in my church, or this is going to take some work to get people to feel good about this change or a new idea. So it's easy for me to talk about these things, but I just always kind of want to make sure that I include this particular slide and this particular disclaimer, and saying that I might have all the ideas in the world, but what things are going to have traction, which things will actually get some movement in your local church as we go through these. So again, I'm going to be suggesting a lot of things. I'm not suggesting that anybody needs to adopt everything that I'm saying, but as the context experts for your congregations, that you'll know what things are going to be important for your congregation. So one of the questions of the how is ways in which we can keep stewardship in focus year round. And when I talk about a year-long strategy for stewardship, somebody will always ask me, are you saying that we should preach on stewardship every Sunday? And I said, absolutely not. But there are more ways to keep these themes alive throughout the year, and ways that we don't even think of, ways we're not even paying any attention to. And so the how is to say, what are the different delivery systems we have in a local church to help people, to give us an opportunity to present them with some of these stewardship ideas. And I think one of the hows about that is a great way is to actually have a group of people who are working on this idea of, how do we develop a year-round strategy for that? And so these are some of the hows. These are some of the methods, some of the delivery systems that can be used. If you do a Sunday bulletin, of course, in the midst of COVID and virtual church, oftentimes we're not doing the bulletins the way we did. We're doing them differently, but certainly bulletins can include stewardship themes to keep people reminding them about what faithful stewardship is, opportunities for giving, stories about places where the giving that they have done has made an impact. And again, all of these newsletters, email, more and more people are using text now to remind people of ministries that are happening, church websites, all these things, social media. Back when we're in the building, things like bulletin boards and study groups and things like that. There are all kinds of possibilities. And we'll talk about some of these as delivery systems and how how they can be effective in keeping the themes going. So again, these are the mechanics of a year-round stewardship strategy. And so brainstorm about what some of the opportunities are in your church. And again, get people together to think of how can we get these messages, these ideas, these different reminders for people about faithful stewardship out into the midst of our congregation. And be creative about it. And that's one of the things I think oftentimes having a separate stewardship team gives them the opportunity to invite some people in who may not be finance people, but who really might be very creative people in terms of how do we communicate? How do we tell these stories? How can we shape things like content for our website and our emails that go out or our newsletters? Some people who are good at writing, some people who maybe are talented in the area of video or digital images that can be used. Again, sometimes an image in itself without a story can just tell such a story. So look for some creative people to be a part of this process. Find messages that will make an impact. And what we talk about oftentimes is, we want to inform people, but we want to inspire them as well. And if we are able to inform them and inspire them by the stories and the messages that we provide, then we'll be able to engage them in actually going out and doing the ministry, being the hands and feet of Christ, engaging with our community, reaching to new people who are in need of things that our church can provide. So all of those become part of that delivery process. I just mentioned a couple of books that I've read that kind of affirm some of these ideas. Matt Miofsky and Jason Bias were church planners who produced this book, which I think is a great book and has gotten wide and a welcome reception, about 8 virtues of rapidly growing churches. And they said one of the characteristics of them is that these are churches that talk about giving early and often. They don't hide that subject. They don't say, well, we won't take in, we won't have any new people join the church on a day when we're going to talk about money because we think we might scare them away. They're right up front about talking about giving. They make that clear. Asking people to give when times are good. That's one of those things, again, when it's a time when you think that people are doing okay, it's a time to ask people to step up. I said this quite a bit during the pandemic, and I said, we had to be very careful about how we appealed to people for money, knowing that some folks who are within our audience and getting our messaging, they may have been negatively impacted by the pandemic. Maybe they lost jobs if they were in food service or had their own business and people weren't coming. A lot of people were negatively impacted about that. We have to be open and understand that. But the other side of that was that for some people who were able to work remotely, and I use my wife and I as an example, as soon as they told us that we didn't have to commute anymore, we were no longer, filling up the car every week. We were no longer spending that extra hour, no longer eating lunches out, doing all that stuff. We were home. And on top of that, we were still qualified for stimulus checks. And so financially, we were in a better place to be asked to say, for those of you who are coming through this pretty well, if you could step up, it will help us in terms of the need that's out there right now is so dramatic. And so again, it's asking people to give, teaching people the benefits and joy of giving, celebrating what giving accomplishes, and talking about money, and not just talking about giving. So how we talk about money, I think, is crucial. And just recently, another book came out by Lovett Weems and Ann Michelle, who are part of the Lewis Center for Church Leadership out of Wesley Seminary. And I just think these 2 principles are powerful, and they're great ideas. And they're, if I could make them the 11th and 12th commandments, I would do that if I had that authority. But principle 1 is you should never talk about people's money in our setting in the church apart from their discipleship. So we talk about generosity, we talk about their money, we talk about giving, all in the context of what it means to be a faithful, growing, maturing disciple. And principle 2 is you never talk about the church's money apart from its mission. And I've been advocating that from the very beginning, is that we talk about money. We don't talk about budgets. We talk about our mission and ministry. And that's really what money is needed for. People need to be reminded that it's not just giving so that there's a building and electricity and heat on, that it's about the ministry that the church is doing and the ongoing way we're supporting that mission and ministry.
Hey, Ken, can we pause for 1 second?
Absolutely.
We may have some folks in the weight room. So yeah, can we unshare and then see if they're there and then get you back on share screen? Kelly's going to do a little check-in real quick just to make sure.
Great.
I think we had some folks who were coming on late, but we just want to make sure they're out there. And of course, just remind everybody, when Ken wraps up the presentation, we'll go to our the chat and to answer any questions folks may have, and then go from there. So Kelly, you're on mute. Kelly, you're on mute. Anybody out there?
You can go ahead and resume. There weren't any people waiting.
Okay. All right. Just checking. All right. Sorry, Ken.
Thank you.
No problem.
All right, pick you
No
back up.
problem. So again, I'm going to run through these quick because I am running a little short on time. But what kind of what are the things? What's the what part of this that we want to be including in our strategy? And again, these are a whole bunch of ideas of study groups that can be looking at Bible teaching or looking at environmental stewardship or how churches can impact the world globally and locally. Topics about living with our money. How do people live not just with the part that they give, which is what we oftentimes only focus on, but how do we live faithfully with the part we keep? And I use this quote that I heard on a workshop that was done for stewardship with people under 40. And I heard this again and again from people saying, not that the church talks about money too much, but what they say is the only time the church talks about money is when they want me to give it. What I hear in that is saying, I'd like to know what the Bible wants to teach me about the money that I keep and how I live faithfully with that. Is there help we can offer people in the area of making a household budget or avoiding the debt trap? Well, we've got some new resources that Cokesbury has just published, a cooperation with the financial well-being work that Westpath is doing, called Saving Grace, which churches can use to help people get to a place of financial well-being where they're not burdened by debt, where they have savings so they don't have to go to their credit card every time an emergency comes up. These are wonderful materials. I wish I could talk more about them, but I'll move through it quickly, but check them out on the Cokesbury website. They're absolutely excellent.
Hey, Ken, can you go back to sharing your screen?
Yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm not
That's okay.
sharing anymore.
That's all right.
Wait a second. So I'm not sharing. All right, let me go back. Okay, so share this one. Thank you for telling me that. I was still up on my screen. I thought I was doing it.
Not a problem.
No problem. Here we go. All right. So let's go here. I'm going to back up a bit, but I just want to mention these. This is the Saving Grace material that I was talking about. Again, helping people get to that better place in terms of their personal finances, including opportunities for people to look at themselves, to look at their money values, to help them get in touch with where do our money values come from. We have a great piece on our website written by Dan Dick, who was a predecessor of mine at Discipleship as well, called the Money Autobiography. And it's about 28 questions for us to look at and reflect on to try and find out where do we get our money values from? How did they become a part of our lives? Things like environmental stewardship. What are lifestyle changes that can help us make a more sustainable world for our children and our grandchildren? What we consume, what we waste, how we spend, all reflects on who we believe is the source of all the goodness. How do we treat God's creation by the way we spend and the way we waste? And then again, the possibility of even getting people out of the church and doing an event like this where we try and see how we can be better stewards of creation that God has given us. And finally, to the opportunity at times to reflect on how, when we use our dollars and when we spend our money, we are making a statement about what kind of conditions and labor practices have our approval. And so it's a way in which we consciously or unconsciously vote by the way we spend our money. And so oftentimes we need to do some reflection, I think, and some witnessing about the church to say, do we, the way we use our money, the way we spend, the way we accumulate, is it having is it having an impact on people that we don't see who are being affected by that? And so again, I won't have time to do this, but the opportunity here is to say, what are some of the other elements? There's more than I've listed, some that may be particularly relevant for people in your congregation. And so just offer the opportunity for folks to do that and to explore some of that. Now, as I wrap up here, I'm kind of at my time here, but let me say that I am not saying that an annual campaign can't still be a component of this. but it should be a part of a larger strategy. And many of the campaign materials that are out there that Cokesbury has provided provide study materials that go with them. And I think the most effective way to use those is to do a study around stewardship and generosity at a time when you're not asking folks to do a commitment card or a giving estimate, but to do it at a different time when people can reflect on it and how that can impact and change their lives. And then, again, as part of the campaign, maybe later on, you have the opportunity to have people reflect back on how they were feeling when they went through that study. But always tying it to the same time that we're doing this kind of, in my mind, encourages people to question the authenticity of whether we're really doing this study to help them live in a better and a more faithful way, or whether we're doing it so they'll do better with their pledge card. So again, narrative budgets are a great way to visualize and give people the opportunity to see the impact that their giving makes. And these are just some samples. And I launched this fall an online course for helping churches develop their own narrative budget. It's an 8-session course. We're just wrapping it up. It's going to close on Friday, but I'll be offering it again this summer. It'll probably open up in July or August. And it's a free course that folks can go through and take your line item budget and help from it develop a narrative budget. And again, you can find more information about it. I'll be on our website. This is what your foundation is here to help you educate people about planned giving, about bequests, about asset giving. They have the capacity and the knowledge to do that and to help people encourage that. But again, oftentimes our folks need to be reminded that these are ways they can give. This is giving beyond the offering plate. And many times what people will find is the tax benefit of them making gifts. And I talked a lot about this, before the end of the year, but as people's assets, investments have matured, even things like Bitcoin and stuff like that, as the value on it goes up and up, the idea of giving it away and getting the tax benefit from it can really help people, and oftentimes. And again, this is where your foundation is so well equipped to help you with those things. And again, even property and things like that, and people's wills and all those kind of agreements are all things that are part of that broader picture of stewardship that we want to include in our strategy. Remember that we're in a unique place now that we're getting to that point where people still have mail, and getting mail is kind of an exciting thing right now. It's become a new level when you actually get something in your mailbox that's not a bill or junk mail. So again, things you could get people things to consider, or different ways to give, or seasonal giving. Sometimes some of these things are the kind of things that people need to kind of read and kind of put aside and then talk over in their family. And sometimes those things lend themselves to being more of a hands-on piece. And so I encourage people to not discount the power that you can have through giving people some that way. And then I also want to mention this idea too, that if your church is doing quarterly statements, and I hope that your churches are, because it's really the most effective way to keep people who really want to give the amount that they have pledged to give and set aside to give in the quarterly statement. Remember that oftentimes it's a lot of space on there that you could use to tell stories of impact of people's giving and to say thank you. And so make sure that you're not sending a statement that has a lot of blank space that could be used for those kind of purposes, because I think that's a crucial part of our strategy. Personal witness is still a very, very powerful way to move people and to help them understand how people like them have responded to God in a generous way. And right now, it's easy for us to record those things and to be able to share them in a variety of different places. So make sure that's present. Now, this is my last slide, is if you're going to do a stewardship strategy, you've got to get a plan and put it on a calendar. You could come up with a whole bunch of ideas, but if you don't have a plan that's laid out on the calendar, where you've laid out for yourself, you've thought about the seasons and when the messages are going to be most appropriate, You have delivery dates of when pieces need to be ready by. You're keeping in mind the people who are receiving it. Oftentimes, if they're new members or they're longtime members, maybe the messages need to be tailored a little differently. Consider other church events that are going on and how you can work with that so you don't over program and don't burn your people out. And then know what's doable in your context. So that's it for me. I'm sorry I kind of pushed through it kind of fast. I have a tendency to get waylaid in particular places, but I'm going to stop sharing this and then see what questions are out there.
Well, thank you, Ken. As we wait for any questions that come up in the chat, I just want to kind of go over a few little housekeeping notes. First of all, this webinar was recorded and it will be posted on our website in a couple days. Second, we have more webinars that are lined up in the next couple months. On Wednesday, February 16th, you'll see on your screen at the same time, 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock, Ken is going to join us again to talk about how clergy can get smarter about their taxes. And Ken will be joined by Don Joyner, who is a certified financial planner, and he's a leading United Methodist clergy tax preparer with Discipleship Ministries in Nashville. And this webinar has a lot of great content for clergy and church treasurers as well. Then on Wednesday, March 9th, we'll have the final spring webinar that we'll offer featuring Ken, and Ken will discuss inviting generosity beyond the Sunday offering. We'll talk about a little bit more detail about some of the things he touched on today, but having strategy in place for gifts that might take the form of a bequest, an endowment, memorial gifts, or gifts of property, stocks, or valuable collectibles. But right up our alley and what we do here at the foundation of looking outside the box, if you will, outside of Sunday offering. And I guess one of the questions we'd want to pose heading into that one is, if your church was approached by someone offering a larger gift, would you know how to respond? And so Ken's going to walk us through some of those steps, and we'll do that in partnership. Each webinar, of course, is free of charge. All we ask is that you sign up and register, and the registration link is on our website at www.umf.org/upcoming events. Any questions for anybody out there? I know, Ken, you ran through a lot of deep information in a short period of time. I'm a big fan of Simon Sinek's book, Start With Why. I'd also encourage, as folks, on a side note, the golden circle concept is really a smart one and is very resonating, has resonated very well with me. The book's great. Also, you can check him out. He delivered a TED Talk a few years back that's a great synopsis of the book, and I think maybe even the genesis for the deeper, more for the book itself. But Simon Sinek, great speaker, and kind of in that business guru leadership space. Ken, any final thoughts from you?
No, I think, like I say, it's one of those things in terms of the strategy is that you just need to get a few people together. And again, I'm not recommending you do it, without your church leaders knowing about it, but, maybe get the blessing of your finance. If you don't have a separate stewardship team, get the blessing of your finance committee to say, we want to bring together a group of people. And folks from the finance committee who want to be involved can be involved. But we want to bring some other folks involved and help kind of lay out a strategy where we're going to keep these themes, before people. You've heard it before, Jesus talks in the Gospels more about money and possessions, not necessarily in terms of fundraising, but in terms of how that's an important way for us that can be either an obstacle or a doorway into us learning more about God's love and compassion. And so we need to treat it by giving it more than a couple of weeks, in the fall where we talk about it and we put it away. So I think it's a great way. And again, we're still, almost in the first half of January. We're still in January. It's not a bad time to get our lay some things out and get it into play. And, you know, if everything doesn't take this year, you have a group that a little later in the year will begin to kind of get some buy-in to do more in the coming year.
Well said. Well, we have no questions at this time, so I think we're going to adjourn for the day. Ken, thank you again for your time. We really appreciate it. We appreciate your partnership, and we look forward to being back on screen with you next month on February 16th for the clergy session on getting smarter about your taxes with Ken and with Don joining us.
Yeah. Don's the authority. I just come along to, you know, give him a chance to take a drink of water once in a while. But yeah, this is his area of expertise, and I know it's not mine. But I keep my ears open, and every once in a while I give him a chance to get a drink of water. So
that's great.
Great.
Thanks, Ken. We appreciate you as a resource and your partnership, and you spending some time with us today. We're adjourned, and we will talk to you soon. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Good. Everybody stay safe. Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.